Have you ever, like, when you're scrolling online, especially for something like tabletop RPGs, have you ever, like, wondered how much of that content is actually made by another human being? Like, it's a weird thought, right? And it's something that we're going to be, like, diving into today.
Yeah, and like to that point, we're going to be looking at a really interesting situation that has kind of unfolded in the D&D YouTube and just like the broader RPG content creation space.
Yeah.
And it's all surrounding a guy called Paul Bellow.
Yeah.
He runs this YouTube channel, Lit RPG Adventures. And he's become a bit of a controversial figure.
Yeah, and while the initial video that we're going to be talking about kind of framed him in a more critical light,
Right.
it's important to remember that there are always two sides to every story, and today we're going to be looking at both of those.
Totally, totally.
So we want to acknowledge Paul Bellow's long history with the hobby of RPGs and also explore like the way that he's been creating content lately.
Yeah.
And so, this isn't just going to be a judgment. This is more about like unpacking it, exploring it,
Exactly.
and coming to some sort of understanding.
Yeah, more of a nuanced take rather than like right or wrong or good or bad.
Exactly.
Just trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And specifically, what we're going to be talking about is the different perspectives that people have on Paul's content.
Yeah.
Especially focusing on his use of AI.
Yes.
And how that might affect you, the listener.
Right.
As an avid enjoyer of RPGs and, someone who wants to stay informed about the RPG world.
Okay, so to start off, we should probably take a look at the video that kind of kicked this whole thing off.
Yeah.
And this is a video by a YouTuber called Kosal.
Right.
And the title of the video is, I honestly ranked your favorite D&D YouTubers.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically Kosal is another content creator in the D&D space.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's giving his subjective rankings of other D&D creators.
Yeah, he's got like a whole system, right?
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, this is my favorite.
No. It's like a whole tier list.
Yeah.
He's got S tier at the top
Mm-hmm.
and then F tier at the bottom.
Yeah.
And, he's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And he's getting, criticisms for certain people.
Very critical, yeah.
But it's very clear that, he comes from a perspective of someone who makes content.
Yeah. Yeah. He's in the game himself.
Exactly.
So where does Paul Bellow and his Lit RPG Adventures fall into this ranking system?
So he gave him a D tier.
Oh.
And, D in Kosal's system is not really a compliment.
Yeah.
In fact, he very explicitly says that D can also stand for dog shit.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's pretty low.
It's not very good.
Yeah.
And so his initial impressions of Lit RPG Adventures seem to be that Paul's uploading very frequently, and he's using a lot of AI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he mentions AI-generated images.
Yeah.
And AI voices.
Yeah.
And that was something that kind of made Kosal uncomfortable and confused.
Yeah. Yeah. And he does mention that, Lit RPG Adventures has indicated that they're using AI voices because Paul Bellow's voice is recovering from some sort of injury.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's actually important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like a choice,
Yeah.
There was kind of a reason behind it.
Right. Right. So beyond those initial observations, where did Kosal's investigation lead him?
So his investigation went a little deeper, and he really started focusing on the actual articles that were being read by the AI voices.
Yeah, like what was the substance?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so he would find out that these AI voices are actually reading from a specific D&D website.
Mm-hmm.
And that this D&D website is actually owned by Paul Bellow.
Oh.
And, the website featured articles that were, said to be written by all these different people.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of really sparked Kosal's interest, right?
Right.
I was like, wait, are these articles actually real?
Yeah.
So that's when he really started digging. So it went beyond just the AI voices and the images.
Yeah, now he's really suspicious.
Yeah.
So how did he approach this deeper investigation into the articles?
So, well, first he thought maybe the articles were also AI generated.
Okay.
And then he kind of focused on a couple specific writer profiles.
Yeah.
One of which was Ken Chan.
Okay.
And the other one was Amir Barot, who also went by B-Lore.
Okay.
And, these profiles had descriptions on the Lit RPG Adventures website.
Mm-hmm.
But Kosal, being the great internet sleuth that he is, also found another website called Who Year Chapter Books that's also owned by Paul Bellow.
Oh, wow. So now we're connecting multiple things here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he took a closer look at the profile picture for this Amir Barrett guy.
Okay.
And the picture had some things about it that made him think that maybe it was an AI-generated stock photo,
Oh, no.
which would mean, right, like, is Amir Barrett even a real person?
Right. So then he started to notice that some of these profile pictures, they were popping up on both the Lit RPG Adventures website and on Who Your Chapter books.
Okay.
And he even found one writer, Kenny King, whose picture was on both of those sites
Okay.
and also on Amazon, where he was selling children's books.
So, wait, so are all of these people the same person?
We don't know.
I mean, is it Paul Bello?
Maybe.
Is Paul Bello all these people?
He could be.
Or are they just like made up AI people?
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
So basically, Kosal, by the end of this investigation, is implying that like this whole thing, this whole website, all this content, it might all be fake.
It's like a house of cards, yeah.
Exactly.
Like he pulled out the bottom card
Right.
and the whole thing might just go.
Yeah, like, are the voices AI?
Yeah.
Are the articles AI?
Yeah.
Are the writers even real people?
Are any of this real?
We don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of questions raised by this video.
For sure.
But now let's switch gears a little bit and look at what was written in defense of Paul Bello.
Exactly.
There was a text that we found called In Defense of Paul Bello, a fine fellow and not so evil AI mastermind.
Ah, fine fella.
Yeah.
Okay, so this text, was offering kind of a different perspective on the
Yeah.
whole situation.
Yeah.
And it started off by really emphasizing that, Paul is human first,
Okay.
and that even though there's all this, AI-generated content and procedural generation and all this other stuff, at the heart of it is a real person, Paul Bello,
Right.
who has been, like, making lit RPG and RPG-inspired stories for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, he's been in this game since, like, the beginning of D&D.
Yeah.
Like, the early days.
Okay. So the defense is saying he's a real person who's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't get it twisted. This guy, he knows his RPGs.
Okay. Okay.
And so it goes on to talk about how, procedural generation, and random table, these things have always been a part of RPGs.
Yeah.
And that Paul is basically just using technology, modern technology, to do what people have always been doing.
Right. Right.
And so they bring up the point that, like, maybe AI can be a tool
Okay.
to be more creative,
Okay.
not just a replacement
Okay.
for a human.
Okay. So they're saying he's just using tools to help him, not replace him.
Right. And it mentions that Paul had been creating content for a while that, nobody was really paying attention to.
Yeah. He was flying under the radar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he starts using AI, and suddenly, boom, he's got everyone's attention.
Yeah. So AI kind of gave him the spotlight.
Exactly.
Okay, I see. So the defense is saying, yes, he uses AI, but he's not being replaced by it. He's
Yeah.
still the creative mind behind it.
Exactly.
Okay. What else does the defense say?
So they argue that even though he's using AI to make things faster, it's still his personality that's coming through.
Right. It's still his humor. It's still his touch.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And they say you just have to kind of look past the fact that it's AI, and you can still see Paul in the work.
Okay, so look deeper, basically.
Right. And they also talk about how Paul has a good sense of humor,
Mm-hmm.
and he's pretty humble,
Yeah.
especially when you think about the criticism he's getting.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's very open in his responses,
Right.
and he's happy to engage with satire,
Right.
which they're saying, like, that's not really the actions of someone who's trying to, be deceptive.
Right. If you were trying to trick people, you wouldn't be so open.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
And they even mentioned that he jokingly refers to some of his work as monkey poo, you know.
Yeah.
So, he's got a level of
He's
self-awareness.
not taking himself too seriously.
Exactly, yeah. It's all in good fun.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems like the defense is really trying to paint him as, like, someone who's just having fun.
Yeah, and that he's not this evil mastermind that people might think he is.
Yeah. Yeah. So anything else from the defense that stood out?
Yeah, they also talk about how he's really focused on the community
Okay.
and how he supports a lot of other writers and creators,
Okay.
and that the AI is just another tool to help him engage with the community,
Okay.
not to replace it.
Yeah.
And they point out that he's really open to collaboration,
Right.
and he accepts criticism pretty well.
Yeah.
And they even point out that, his initial reaction to Kosal's video was actually quite positive.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So he's not, like, shutting down criticism?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And then they also kind of jokingly dismiss any idea that he's secretly backed by some big corporation
Okay, yeah.
and that this is all part of some big plan.
So no Illuminati.
No Illuminati.
Okay.
It's just Paul.
Just a guy with his AI.
Yeah, just a guy making stories,
Okay.
having fun.
Oh, okay. So it seems like this defense is really painting him as, like, a creative individual using modern tools to connect with people,
Exactly, yeah.
to tell stories.
Yeah, they even say, by the end of it,
Yeah.
that, he's not so bad after all. In fact, he's a fine fellow.
Yeah, that fine fellow is sticking with me.
Yeah,
Okay, so we have the initial video raising concerns, and then this text defending Paul Bello.
right.
But then, there's also a direct email correspondence between Paul and Kosal,
Yeah,
which we're going to look at now because I think it gives us some insight into Paul's own perspective on everything.
Yeah.
So in his email, he addresses Kosal directly and even brings up that maybe his initial comment on the video was like filtered or deleted,
yeah,
even though Kosal later says that's probably not what happened.
right.
But Paul also kind of humorously acknowledges the irony of him finally getting attention because he's using AI when nobody was paying attention when he wasn't using it.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like, oh, so you only care now that I'm using robots?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So he seems pretty self-aware.
Yeah.
But what's also interesting about the email is how, like, good-natured he is.
Yeah.
Like, he says he has no hard feelings and even jokes that maybe he should include more, like, clues in his content to lead to more investigations.
Like he's leaning into it.
Yeah.
He's having fun with the whole mystery.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
And he jokes about the quality of his articles and, like, playfully corrects Kosal, saying they're monkey poo, not dog shit.
Right.
Which, again, it's, like, very self-deprecating, very funny.
Yeah. He's not afraid to poke fun at himself.
Exactly. And he even proposes this, like, satirical collaboration between them, like an interview or, like, a sponsored segment.
Yeah.
So that they can both benefit, from the increased attention.
Right. Hey, if we're going to be in the spotlight, let's make the most of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And, he even jokes about, like, improbable connections to Hasbro.
Yeah, he's like, maybe I'm secretly working for the big D&D corporation.
Yeah, right.
Wink, wink.
So he really keeps that, like, lighthearted conspiratorial tone.
Exactly, yeah.
And he offers Kosal a free novel.
Yeah.
Just out of the blue.
Yeah, he's like, hey, here's a free book.
And ends with cheers. And, like, definitely not an AI.
Which is, again, very funny.
Yeah. So Kosal's response was pretty short.
Yeah.
And he basically just assured Paul that he's not deleting comments.
Yeah.
And that YouTube is probably just doing its thing.
Right.
And he acknowledges that Paul's response was really positive and says, glad you took it on the chin well, respect. And then signs off with, I am an AI, like playing along.
Keeping the joke going.
Yeah. So then Paul follows up with another email, right?
Yeah.
Where he's like, is the comment thing on my end or is it YouTube, the tubes?
Yeah.
And he announced that he's making his own response video.
Right.
To Kosal's video.
Yeah.
But he's not going to use any of Kosal's content.
Yeah. Which is, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's his own response.
Right.
And he also mentions that, like, his main goal is to get people interested in his Hex World Builder project.
Okay.
That's like his passion project.
Yeah.
And then he does this really interesting thing.
Yeah.
He mentions that his bardic lore stream is going to have this, like, Moroccan score.
Okay.
And you remember how Kosal was talking about that Emir Barrett profile?
Yeah.
And the maybe AI-generated picture of a Moroccan man?
Yeah.
So it seems like Paul's kind of playing with that a little bit.
Yeah, he's like, hey, remember that thing you were talking about?
Right.
Well, guess what's in my stream?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
He's having a little fun with it.
Yeah, a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
And then he signs off as not related to Saul Bello, Paul Bello, a fine fellow.
Yeah.
Further solidifying this, like, funny, self-aware persona.
Right.
So it's really interesting to see how dynamic this interaction is and how, like, lighthearted it remains.
Yeah.
Given all this controversy swirling around.
Yeah. It's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Okay, so to really understand how Paul uses AI in his work, we dug a little deeper and we found some posts that he made in the OpenAI Developer Community Forum back in, like, April, May 2021.
Okay, so that was, like, way early in his AI journey.
Oh, yeah. This was, like, back when GPT-3 was brand new.
Okay, yeah.
And he was already using it to make RPG stuff for Lit RPG Adventures.
So he was, like, ahead of the curve.
Yeah, big time. He even wrote this whole blog post about it.
Okay.
And, like, he was super excited about AI.
Okay.
Um, so at the time, he was implementing this freemium model for lit RPG adventures.
Okay.
And like a key part of that was that users could choose if their generated content would be public.
Okay.
So it goes into a community library
Right.
or private,
Okay.
where they keep the copyright.
Okay, so even back then he was thinking about copyright.
Yeah, which is really interesting to see, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he was even saying that, like, if it was private, he wouldn't use that content to train the AI.
Oh, interesting. So he was like respecting people's choices.
Yeah.
Okay.
And his big goals back then were to train the AI using the content that people are making,
Okay.
but also editing,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
And he thought that by doing that, it would make the content better and cheaper to make.
So he was really looking at how to use the community to improve things?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And he also talked about removing stuff that was copyrighted.
Okay.
So, like, if the AI spat out something about Drow
Yeah.
or the Forgotten Realms,
Right.
he would remove that.
Okay, so he was trying to stay away from those legal issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though the AI would sometimes do it by accident.
Right, right.
So that's pretty interesting to see.
Okay, so what else was he thinking about back then?
So he wasn't just thinking about, like, generating text. He was thinking about what comes next.
Yeah.
So, like, humans editing and making the content better.
Right.
And even, like, having an interactive game,
Oh, wow.
which he called MED 2.0.
Okay.
So he was really looking at how AI and human creativity could, like, work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he even wanted to make a whole new world
Okay.
called Zydan
Okay.
as the setting for all this generated content.
Right.
And so that way it would be completely separate from any other existing IPs.
Okay. Yeah.
And he really stressed that he wanted to be transparent with his community
Okay, that's good.
about using AI
Yeah.
and all the copyright stuff.
Okay, so it seems like transparency was really important to him.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And in one of his posts, he even, like, defined what he means by lit RPG,
Okay.
which is basically stories that combine, regular writing with RPG elements.
Right, so he was showing his knowledge of the genre.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And looking forward, he even talked about making an API
Yeah.
to connect lit RPG adventures with, like, Roll20.
Okay.
So he was thinking about how to make it more accessible to everyone.
Right, connect it to the tools that people are already using.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so bringing it all together, we see kind of two different sides to this story.
Totally.
We have Kosal's video that, brings up a lot of questions.
Yeah.
About, is this content really genuine?
Right.
Is it transparent?
Yeah.
Are the writers even real people?
Yeah, big questions.
Yeah. But then we have Paul Bellows' defense,
Right.
which focuses on his human creativity,
Yeah.
his long involvement in the RPG world,
Yeah.
and his view that AI is a tool to help him.
Yeah, not to replace him.
And then the email exchange
Yeah.
shows that he's got a sense of humor.
Right.
And that he can take criticism.
Yeah.
And, when we look at his early posts in the OpenAI community, we see a creator who's really exploring the potential of AI,
Totally.
in an open way, thinking about copyright, thinking about the community,
Yeah.
thinking about the future of his projects.
Right.
So it all comes back to that phrase, Paul Bellow, fine fellow. It
Yeah.
just really, really sticks out,
It does.
especially given all of the different sides of this story.
Yeah, it really does. So this whole situation, makes you think
Yeah.
as a listener
Yeah.
in this world where digital and, AI and human creation are kind of blending together.
Yeah.
How does all this stuff with Paul Bellow challenge your own assumptions about how content is made, about the community, about the future of stuff that we love, like D&D?
Yeah, it's a really interesting, complicated situation.
It is.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
What stood out to you?
Right.
Did Kosal's video, raise some red flags?
Oh, yeah.
Or do you think what Paul's doing is just, a creative adaptation
Right.
to the times that we're living in?
Exactly.
So share your thoughts in the comments.
Yeah, let us know.
Let's have a discussion.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
And, one final thought.
Yeah?
For Paul Bellow. Fine fellow.
The fine fellow.
May your dice always roll in your favor.